Welcome to the Upshot, Ultra World Disc Golf's podcast about the latest in the disc golf world. I am the publisher, Charlie Eisenhood, with you on this Tuesday, January 2nd, 2024. Happy New Year, everybody. Joining me today is Brian Earhart, back on the pod. Brian, what's up, man?
Not much. Just sitting here in Charlotte, North Carolina. Finally starting to get a little antsy for the season. I was really enjoying the off season, but I feel like now that the New Year's come around, I feel like I'm ready to talk some disc golf and get back on the road.
I know. I mean, we're not so far away. We're like, 6 weeks-ish from the All-Star weekend, which is going to be held in Florida at the now Olympus course that will also play host to the first event of the year, the Chess.com Invitational. Is that what it's called?
I think it's the Chess.com Florida Invitational presented by Discraft.
Okay.
Something like that. It's pretty.
You got it.
Yeah.
You got all the powered by, presented by stuff. Josh Mansfield, I'm back from paternity leave as of today. And Josh Mansfield just no-showed. He's just like, "Oh, I'm on vacation." I don't, it's wrong.
That's slacking right there, Charlie.
It's bad. It's really slacking. Did you get any nice holiday gifts?
Oh man, I just moved into a house. First home that I've ever bought here in Charlotte.
That's an immense gift.
Yeah, it was a gift that we gave ourselves, but 6 minutes away from Hornets Nest in a really nice area of Charlotte, which is enjoyable. But a lot of the gifts that I received were like housewarming type gifts, and a lot of them quite cheesy. And not usable, but I did get a slap chop from my father, which I didn't think I would like, but boy howdy, is it a kitchen staple now.
If you need to cut up an onion, there's nothing faster.
Unbelievable.
It's unbelievable.
I felt like I was living 1,000 years in the future. Amazing.
And you don't burn your eyes. I get just crushed when I cut onions. I really should get one of those. I haven't thought about slap chop in like 20 years until you just said that. But I used to watch the infomercials.
Unbelievable infomercials as well.
Yes. I used to enjoy sitting and watching infomercials. Like when I was a kid. Just sit and be like, wow, this is amazing. Look at this knife.
Look how passionate
Let the weight of the knife do the cutting. I got, let's see, what did I get? I bought myself like 1,000 mystery boxes, which are soon to be unboxed.
I heard about that.
Yeah.
How did that go?
Well, I haven't opened them yet. So they're piling up behind me. I'm waiting on the Discmania black box now. And then I think after that, I'm going to open them all up and I'm going to do like a full review and, the highs and the lows, all of it. I also got, I know you're a chess guy. Mm-hmm. I'm a backgammon guy. I got a beautiful backgammon board. It's like my first professional board. So I'm excited. I got a big backgammon tournament coming up later this week.
Really?
Yes.
On the board.
New York Metropolitan Open. Yes, I will take my board. It's like the second, it might be the biggest tournament in the U.S. or the second biggest. So exciting stuff.
Enjoy.
Thank you. I hope you get to meet awesome chess.com people in Florida, by the way.
I cannot wait. I have been a chess freak for a little bit now, and it's such a nice way to cut the fat of thinking about disc golf 24/7. It's great to just get lost in a game of chess where you don't have to talk about anybody or have anyone talk to you. It's great.
All right, well, let's get to talking about the disc golf news of the past few weeks. Of course, I've been away since Thanksgiving. I was kind of on the show, but we did pre-recorded episodes for quite a while there. I popped in for the Macbeth interview a couple weeks ago. But lots to discuss, and we're going to begin with what is now, sort of the first show of the year tradition, which is talking about all of the player movement. Now, we still are waiting on many of the biggest names to announce their destinations, but here is what we do have right now. The biggest news from the past day or two, Emerson Keith is joining Innova. We already knew that he was leaving Lone Star Disc. And then Gannon Burr and Alden Harris both announced that they are leaving Prodigy. Neither of them has announced yet where they're headed in 2024. But of course, Gannon leaving, widely expected. Alden leaving maybe a little bit more of a surprise, but doesn't feel like way off the map in terms of sort of what we've kind of seen from Prodigy over the last couple years. Elsewhere, Macy Vela Diaz is leaving Dynamic Discs. Jessica Weiss and Bradley Williams upgraded to the Star team at Innova, which is largely the same team as it was a year ago, plus Emerson Keith. I'll pause there. Thoughts on this, particularly, maybe Gannon leaving Prodigy. He had a pretty funny announcement video, actually. Let's take a quick listen and watch of Gannon's announcement video on Instagram.
Happy New Year, everyone. 2023 was an amazing disc golf season. I had 5 disc golf pro tour wins, met some amazing people, and played some awesome courses out there. I also had a ton of fun with my friends on the road. After 7 great years, I will be officially leaving Team Prodigy. At this time, I need to make the choice of a champion to continue to be the leading edge in this sport. I'm a dynamic player, and I believe I need to reinvent my game to be the world leader in disc sports. Make sure to be on the lookout for an announcement soon. I can't wait for the 2024 season, and I hope to see you guys out there.
First reaction is that he knows what he's doing. He's actually quite social media savvy, and I love his eye for satire. He has such a dry sense of humor, and I will say the same thing about Alden Harris, too. So, I mean, if Alden ever wants to stop playing disc golf for a living, he probably has another career lined up for him in whether it's social media management or content creation. He could be the next Wendy's Twitter. That's what I see for Alden. But for Gannon, he knows exactly what he's doing. He's just giving everybody what they want. And regardless of where he goes, I just love the way he thinks about the game and thinks about himself. He can be critical of himself, but still have a sense of humor about it. He doesn't take things too personally. Gannon is just in his element right here. And I think I know where he's going. I've heard some rumors, but we'll just have to see. I'm sure he's got a surprise up his sleeve.
Well, for anybody who may have missed what he did there in that video, he referenced 5 or 6 different companies' slogans in talking about his future in a complete deadpan. So good stuff from Gannon. And, I think he's certainly been one of the widely expected free agents that's going to land somewhere. The other player that we haven't heard anything about one way or the other yet is Eagle McMahon.
Yes.
And I mean, there's been a lot of talk about him leaving Discmania. We know that he's been looking, at his options in the marketplace. And we haven't heard an announcement that he's leaving Discmania. Maybe there's been some little signs that perhaps he is leaving, with Discmania releasing more of their Eagle discs from the past. And just there's been a lot of smoke. And a lot of times where there's smoke, there's fire when it comes to these sponsorship announcements. Brian, Eagle, I think, will be the biggest free agent move if it happens, even above Gannon, just because he's of the longevity in his sport and the majors that he's won and kind of his profile, particularly in Europe.
True. I will say that there is a bit of mystery surrounding Eagle right now. I mean, everyone's wondering, where his healing is going to go in regards to the big injuries that he's sustained and the surgeries and all sorts of things there. There's still some unknowns there. So companies are going to have to really take a risk. And it's weird to even say that, but he's pretty injury prone. So company's going to have to take a risk on him. And I know that he's going to come out on the other side better. I mean, this past season, I thought was a great example of him adapting to his situation. Even the year prior, he threw that lefty backhand on hole 2 at the European Open because he couldn't throw forehand. Just gave us an absolute stunner of a show, probably the best disc golf that we've watched in years. But then this season, he threw some forehand, but the backhand started evolving in this really cool way. He was able to start shaping the disc because he was forcing himself to do that rather than just going hyzer, forehand, backhand. So I think he's just going to keep evolving as a player. And yeah, whoever lands him is going to be in for a treat. I think his best golf is still ahead of him. It's always a question mark with recovering from a surgery like this, but Dodgers
signed Ohtani coming off surgery. And like, I know Tommy John is different than like labrum repair, but it just feels like even if he only gets back to kind of like the static place that he was going into the surgery, he's still a potential multi-tournament winner, major champion player, not at his best, at like 80% of his best. And so I don't know. I think you might think that Eagle would like not get the same kinds of offers and like the bids would be down for his sponsorship services. But I don't think that's the case, because I think that people recognize that like he's played through this and been extremely good. I mean, he was probably the best player in MPO in like the last 3 months of the season.
True. And I think you can also think about it like this. In disc golf, if you want to get a decent contract, especially if you're like a mid-level player to middle upper class player, you have to start a bidding war with the companies. And with a player like Eagle, it's not going to be one company saying, hey, we'd like to sign you. Any company would like to sign Eagle. So regardless of what a company wants to pay for him, they're going to have to probably pay more, because all the companies are wanting to at least give him some sort of offer. So I think he's one of the few players still that has that bidding war whenever they go up for free agency. I feel like 2020, 2021, that big COVID boom era, there was a lot of bidding wars happening for a lot of players. But as that dies down, I think he's one of the only remaining people that's going to have that.
Yeah, I want to talk about big picture in just a second. Let me run through some more notes and news. Nicholas Antela announced that he is leaving Discmania. That was a bit of a surprise, I think. Discmania has talked about, we had UC on the show 6 months ago or so, and they talked about their priorities were re-signing Nicholas and Eagle. And we haven't heard, well, Nicholas is leaving and Eagle maybe is leaving. So where's Discmania in all this? Chris Clemens announced that he is leaving Dynamic Discs. I said a while ago when he changed his handle from DD Clemonade to DG Clemonade, I was like, nah, this is just off-season hijinks. But wrong. He is making the move. No announcement yet for where he is headed, although lots of speculation about him landing at Discraft. I think his van was spotted in the Discraft parking lot. That's a classic off-season situation. Lowry Lettinen returning with Latitude 64. Katrina Allen announced that she is remaining with DGA in 2024. Her contract has never been made like fully public, whether it was multi-year from the outset. And so unclear whether this was a renewal or just that she's still under contract. So Brian, we're still waiting on a lot of news from various free agents, including Nicholas and Eagle and Gannon. And still some other players who are up for renewals that haven't announced anything one way or the other, like Paige Pierce. But I just kind of like big picture, what are you feel like you're seeing from the sponsorship market right now? Because it's been a much less crazy year than what we saw last season. Now there's still time for things to get wild. We didn't hear about Simon Lizotte signing with MVP until late in January of 2023. So who knows? But where do you see the market right now?
Yeah, I think of the children's book, If You Give a Mouse a Cookie. Have you heard of that book, Charlie?
Sure.
If you give a mouse a cookie, it's going to...
world of books.
If you give a mouse a cookie, it's going to ask for milk. And if you give it milk, it's going to ask for the next thing. And I feel like for a couple years, that's where player contracts went. I mean, they just got better and better and better, and they went deeper and deeper and deeper. But I feel like the market eventually, as a lot of people have said, is going to start maturing, and companies are going to start looking at ROI a little bit more, especially as companies start consolidating, like House of Discs, for example. I think they're all going to start looking at the players a little bit more closely, like, hey, you're a great player, but you're getting 15th place every weekend, which is great, but you're not getting us any publicity. You're not giving us any return. I've talked to a few mid-level pros that are still really solid players that are saying it's kind of a desert out there right now. It's very difficult to create that bidding war, like I had said, to even just drum up interest unless you are one of those hot ticket items that truly sells discs for the company. So I don't think this is scary. I think this just reminds me of where it was before COVID. That's just how it was. I mean, yes, we have $1 million contracts that are starting to change the perception of what it means to be a touring professional, but really at the heart of it all is still the grinders that are out there on the road doing it because they love doing it. And it really reminds me of the sport of bowling. I mean, it's not a perfect comparison, but there's bowlers who are multimillionaires making a lot of money, and then there's infinitely more that are just cutting their teeth, getting from tournament to tournament, trying to make it happen. And they're all really good, just hoping to make that one break that puts them in the spotlight. So I don't know. In disc golf, even being in the spotlight for a short period of time doesn't secure you any sort of deal. So I'm interested to see where this maturation goes.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's power law distribution, where you have 5% of pro disc golfers making like 80% of the money. Mm-hmm. And I think because of how much growth there was in disc golf overall over the last 3 years, companies were like, we're so flush with cash, like, let's just throw the bag at people. Like, oh, like, we want to grow our team. Like, mid-tier player who finished 24th on the Pro Tour last year, here's a monster contract relative to what you've been getting in the past. And I think the thing is, like, when we have a down year or like a flattish year like 2023 was for disc golf, and just like the oversupply issues starting to become an issue and sales are down a little bit across the board, then companies start to look at it and go, oh, like, the players that are selling discs are these like top 5 players, and these middle pack players, they're not selling discs anymore. They might have been selling discs a year ago because people just wanted to buy any disc possible. So if you wanted a particular mold and you could only find it as a tour series from, middle of the pack player, you buy it, and that looks like sales attributable to the player, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was just sales attributable to the vast demand for discs relative to the supply. So I think what you're going to see is that just flattens out a lot, and companies recognize that, and then like the contract starts to fall out a little bit for those players. It doesn't surprise me at all. It's like a very natural part of where we are in the market cycle for disc golf.
Something that I noticed is the newer generation of player is playing and going on tour to get that $1 million contract. I think just one generation before, like the Kyle Kleins and Nicholas Antilas and those players, I look at my generation, I only toured for 4 years, but, like myself, Perkins, Luke Humphreys, Eric Oakley, there's a lot of guys in that class that kind of came around the scene at the same time that were trying to play and make a living as a professional disc golfer. But to make a living, we also had to pick up side gigs and do media and make sure we were out there doing clinics and all sorts of other work to not only get our name out there, but to just make enough money to get to the next week. But that also takes away from you playing to beat Paul Macbeth, who was the same age as us. So it was kind of a tricky situation, and you had to take a big risk if you wanted to just throw everything aside and only compete and only try to make that money, or make the money from the big player contract.
Right.
So now the difference is, Gannon Burr is not going to go do commentary. He's not going to go do post-production commentary at 7 a.m. before he plays. That's just not going to happen. So you have to make some more intentional decisions. I feel like the competition's only getting tougher year after year. And you're going to have to compete with guys like Kyle Klein and Nicholas, who's training super hard in the off season, and Gannon and, Cole Riddall. And I mean, the list goes on at this point, and there's even more 16, 17-year-olds waiting to do the exact same thing with little to no risk. So yeah, I don't know. That's kind of where I see it. And it's going to be tough for touring players in the next 5 years.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I want to point out this chart. This comes from the Fandom survey. Within the past 12 months, have you purchased a touring or signature series disc for any of these players? Now, I don't know, something like 3,500 or 4,000 people filled this survey out. It's not an exhaustive list of all disc golfers in the universe, but I think it's a pretty good snapshot. We'll put it up on the screen here on YouTube. And what you can see, 40% of respondents said that they bought a Simon Lizotte disc in the last 12 months. Okay, that is an enormous number and shows you exactly why MVP was willing to pay him a huge deal, because he is one of those top 3 guys who can really move plastic. And that certainly happened. But then look at the drop-off. Macbeth at 26%, Calvin Heimberg at 21%, Kristen Tatar at 19%, by far the most, presumably valuable FPO player based on this metric. And then Eagle at 18%, and then another big drop down to Nate Sexton at 13%, who just keeps on selling those Firebirds. He just keeps on selling them. Boom, boom, boom. He's got that for maybe the next 25 years. He'll keep selling the Firebirds. But then, you get below 10% pretty quick. It's Ricky at 12, Brody at 12, and then James Conrad at 9%. And then, you got to go, look, Gannon Burr only 5%. And whether that's attributable to how people will perceive Gannon or whether it's a prodigy issue, that is an astonishingly low number for a player who is as good as he is.
I agree. I agree, but also he's still trying to make a name for himself. He's still trying to make a brand for himself. I think he's finally done that. And I think moving companies, given that he doesn't stay with Prodigy, like he said, I think it's going to be good for him. It's not like a knock to Prodigy. I think a change of scenery is good when you are known as a young, up and comer at one company. Now you can rebrand yourself and reinvent yourself as a superstar with another company. And when I look at him play and when I listen to him, talk about the game, he is already a superstar. I mean, he's a genius when it comes to the game and how he thinks about it. If you haven't watched my episode of Catch that I did with him, he literally gives like a 15-minute clinic of some of the most cool philosophical, theories on his idea of throwing and what's optimal at the pro level. I mean, the kid is just really, really smart and gifted. And not only is he smart, he's just mind-bogglingly talented at such a young age. So I love that he's putting weight on. I love that he's putting muscle on. I mean, he's doing everything that he needs to do to remain a superstar and continue to mature. I mean, he's gonna be the best player in the world for a while if he continues on this pace. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, well, Isaac Robinson hopes to do something about that. We'll see what happens. As now Isaac is the clear and obvious face of Prodigy.
Definitely.
For 2024. More to come on all the sponsorship stuff as the big contracts fall into place. Going to move on now to a story that's now a couple weeks old. This was dropped Friday before Christmas in the afternoon, like ultra news dump. And that is that Natalie Ryan has settled with the PDGA. The PDGA dropped its pre-puberty transition rule for players who want to compete in FPO at elite series and majors, which basically was a rule that effectively barred transgender women from playing in the division. Of course, this was the subject of the lawsuits that Natalie filed in California and Minnesota. And that is now settled. PDGA dropped the rule and said that they would not have that rule in place for at least 2 years through 2024 and 2025, which opens the door for Natalie to play a full touring season, not just at, in liberal states, if you will, but across the entire tour. The Pro Tour has adopted the slightly stricter stance of the rules that are still in place, which there are. I mean, there's testosterone limits. The Pro Tour is also requiring that any transgender women who want to play an FPO go through and have doctors sign that they went through surgery to sort of affirm their gender. So Natalie Ryan will be touring again in 2024 and 2025. There were no other terms of the settlement release, but it is certainly possible that there was a payment involved in this. And this is ultimately the resolution to this issue that began about this time a year ago. And, the Pro Tour and the PDGA found out the hard way that they were not in a position legally to fight this battle. And, it cost them way too much money. The PDGA insinuated that they lost money in 2023 for the first time in a long time because they were fighting this battle. And so it is now, this is basically a full concession to Natalie Ryan, who managed to just outmaneuver them in the courts.
Yeah, and before I say anything about this, I have to say, as a member of the media who interviews players of all ideologies, it's not my job to have an opinion on whether or not it's good or bad that transgender players play in the FPO division. It's my job to represent anybody who's allowed to play in that division on that whatever weekend and give them the respect they deserve if they get an interview. So I'm coming at this from a very objective angle because of that, but this doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, when you first came out with your podcast, when this whole thing came down and they banned transgender players from the FPO division, it just felt so fast. It felt like it was rushed and pushed through, and it's kind of like, man, this is so much bigger than disc golf. This is way bigger than disc golf. This is like an unprecedented issue that the sporting world is having to take on, and what do we expect trying to be, the big dog on campus when really we're a very small fish in a very large ocean? So we'll see what happens. I mean, it sounds like they're going to have to take a step back and just sit down and watch what happens in the rest of the sporting world and move on from there. So none of this surprises me that they reach a settlement, that Natalie's going to be able to play, that transgender players in general, not just Natalie, are going to be able to play in the FPO division. None of this surprises me. Like this is just such a bigger issue than I feel like some people try to make it. And, on either side of this argument, people are saying that, well, it shouldn't be so complicated. Well, when you're trying to prove something in the court of law, it is pretty complicated. And something like this is something that I hope they figure out in the future, because it's caused a lot of divisiveness in our community and in the entire world. So, fingers crossed things go smoothly, but yeah, it's definitely definitely an interesting time for disc golf. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, the decision from the PDGA a year ago was an enormous blunder. I mean, there's no way around it. It's not like this wasn't predictable, that they were going to end up in court having to spend a lot of money on lawyers and maybe taking losses. And that's what happened, because you can't, without an established legal precedent here from other sporting organizations, they were running this risk, and they really should have known a lot better. And I think that, it suggests to me that they need to have a lawyer on their board of directors, and they need to have people outside of the world of disc golf on their board of directors, because this would have been discussed more had those people been involved in this. And it's like, whether or not you feel that it's the right thing for transgender women to be able to play an FPO or not, it was very obvious that this was going to cause legal jeopardy for the organizations. And, they found out the hard way. And it's an unfortunately expensive mistake, but ultimately this is where we should have landed 1 year ago, which is that they tighten restrictions. They say, we're not sure where the science is here. We're going to wait and see what happens with the other organizations. And, I think they failed to recognize that the courts are not necessarily going to agree with like the majority opinion of PDGA members.
Exactly.
I'm sorry.
Exactly.
Like, there's going to be a lot of people who are upset about this. And I think the issue feels like it's calmed down a little bit relative to what we saw 6 months ago or 12 months ago. Maybe that's because this news dropped in the Christmas season, and people were not online looking at it, but it doesn't feel quite as intense. But, I think a lot of people are going to be upset, but, ultimately Natalie was playing for much of the last 2 months of the season, and it was not really ended up being much of an issue at all. Of course, that's because she wasn't at the top of the leaderboard. Who knows what will happen this year? But for now, it's kind of just like stand down from the PDGA. And it makes sense. I think unless you're really just extreme on this issue and you're like, no, the PDGA should spend all of the money that they possibly can to fight this issue. Like, I don't think that's how most people are going to look at this. They're going to say, even if you think it's not right for Natalie to be able to play, you got to say, like, okay, like, there's nothing they can do right now. Like, the courts, it's too expensive for them to waste money on this.
Exactly. I have no more words on that. I think that's exactly how I feel as well.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, 30-second rule for the first time in 2024. Stay with us. It's the Upshot.
At Pound, the quality of our gear runs deeper than the stitching. That's why we make everything right here in the U.S., employing highly skilled, well-paid professionals. From bomb-proof Cordura fabric to YKK zippers and recycled plastics, we source the highest quality U.S. materials to make the most comfortable, durable pack in disc golf. Our lifetime warranty stays with the pack, not the purchaser. So regardless of how you find us, we will be here to make sure your pack stays on the course and out of the landfill. Pound's integrity is held together with more than just thread.
Welcome back to the Upshot. It's time for 30-second rule. You get 30 seconds to talk about each topic, and if you go over the limit, it doesn't matter. Here we go. First up, the Disc Golf Pro Tour announced the rest of the European schedule, the European Silver events. Hopefully you checked out the European Roundtable with Josh over the holidays. Awesome episode to hear about all of the exciting stuff going on in Europe. The Belgian Open, May 3rd through 5th. The Norway Open, late May, early June. Heinola Open in early June in Finland. The Ale Open in Sweden, late June. The Järva Open and Tuni in early August in Sweden. And then the Baltic Disc Golf Championship, August 9th through 11th in Estonia. That is the silver points events. So that only earns you points in Europe. Those events do not earn you points towards the main Disc Golf Pro Tour. So they also announced all of the points on the Elite Series. The best 3 out of your 5 European events count towards your total points. The major, the European Open, worth double this year. And then the silvers are worth 50%, and you get the best 4 out of 6. So there will be its own little mini European Tour Championship at the Baltic Disc Golf Championship. And so should be cool. There's going to be a separate Disc Golf Pro Tour European standings, all that. Any thoughts on this, Brian?
I absolutely love it. And I know you're not going to get all the American players to go over there and play these events, but just the fact that we are giving tournament organizers an opportunity to step up their game over in Europe and showcase what they have to offer is only going to be a good thing. I mean, just like all those years ago, and think about Ledgestone however you want, but the tournament Ledgestone really upped the game for professional disc golf in a lot of ways, and I hope that tournaments over in Europe do the exact same thing and push it to an even higher level. So the more high level events we can have over there, the better. I can't wait.
Next up on 30-second rule, Joe Charguloff, the executive director of the PDGA, has decided to step aside. He has been in charge over at the PDGA for 7 years. At the time when he took over, the organization had 11 employees, and now they have more than 40.
Mm-hmm.
The number of total active PDGA members has gone from 41,000 to over 135,000. Revenue's gone from 3.6 million to 10.3 million in 2023. They made it through the pandemic. I mean, to say they made it through the pandemic isn't even the right way to look at it. I mean, I remember they furloughed staff for like a month, and then disc golf went kaboom. And I just remember watching the bank account numbers in the board of director statements going up and up and up. And so, they've done so much hiring. Brian Graham is back. They brought in Doug Bjerkes. They've established, more of a media and marketing side. It's been pretty amazing run for Charguloff. And so we're going to find out what happens, who's next. The PDGA said that the first priority for the executive director position will be given to internal candidates, as it is the PDGA board of directors' desire to promote from within. So who do you think is going to be?
There's a lot of really nice people at that organization, and I've grown to know quite a few of them over the years pretty well. I think Mike Downs is a pretty prime candidate. I don't know if he wants the job or not, but he's just someone that I've known for a long time who's just so passionate about the game, and he's very well respected by a lot of at least the pro players that I know, and just has been in the game of disc golf for a very long time and has scaled with the growth of the sport very well. So he's my pick. If they're going to hire within, he's who I think is going to get it, but who knows?
Going to be interesting. Doug Bjerkes was the head of DD. I mean, I know they just put him in the director of ops role, but things change. He could be somebody that you see there. I think Brian Graham, who is a former executive director, could certainly step back up into that role. And I think there's been speculation about whether Nate Heinold would take over as ED. I don't think so, but we'll see.
That's a huge conflict of interest. I don't know if that's gonna be a thing.
I think he'd have to like step away from the Ledgestone stuff, right? You can't like TD everything and be the executive director, which is why I don't think he'd want it.
I think that's all it comes down to. Is there's probably a few really prime candidates for this job, but it just depends on if they want to take on that responsibility.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens. It's certainly it's a pivot time for the PDGA. As you know, like if you had to bet right now, would you say there will be more PDGA members in 2020 at the end of 2024 or fewer?
I don't think we have ever lost members.
That's true.
So
at least in a long time, maybe way back, but I don't think it's ever happened.
Yeah, because of this like flatlining that's happened since COVID, I think we're getting, maybe a little sad and pessimistic, but disc golf is growing so much all over the place. So no, I think we're going to continue to grow, and we're going to be growing at a surprising rate compared to the expectations we might have now.
Worlds is going to be in Finland in 2025. So after losing out on the bid for 2024, UC Merisma and the Finnish team over there has won the bid for 2025. It'll be the first time the World Championships will be held outside of North America, and only the second time ever outside of the U.S. It was in Canada once, 15, 20 years ago. So Finland, and we'll get the bid, and I think this is amazing. I mean, I've been rooting for this for a long time, Brian. I'm curious how you feel about the fact that, like a lot of times we've seen the European Open have like a thinner lineup, and this is World, so you want to have the best there. Are we going to have the best there in 2025?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Unless something with flight prices just goes through the roof, we're going to have the best players that can win a title go over there. I mean, they have enough time. They have an entire year and a half to plan for this. If you want to win a world title and you know that it's something that's in the cards for you, you're going to be over there. So maybe we see less Americans, over there than before, but that's fine. Let's let the European players have a shot as well. And like I said about the other tournaments on the European tour, please show us what you've got. Please show us a tournament of world-class quality and raise the bar for the rest of the tournament directors. So I can't wait. And Tampere is probably my favorite disc golf course that I have ever played. If you've not watched any coverage, please watch that coverage from years past. It is unbelievable how he's mixed artificial out of bounds with distance, with shot shaping, with risk, reward. It's so good. It's so good on so many levels, and I just can't wait to see the best players play it.
Very exciting. It might be the last time we see the Beast, at least in its current configuration, because they're making changes to that property. So the Beast and Tampere will play host, and it's going to be super exciting. Then they're going to have the Estonian Disc Golf Festival as the European major right around the same time, so it'll make it a nice stretch over there in Europe in the summertime. And it's just a great place to spend the summer, I'll tell you that much. All right, final stop here, a little more lighthearted. There's a Ricky Bitcoin bonus tracker over on Twitter. I don't know if you've seen this, Brian, but it basically periodically, I don't know, like every week or so, it tweets out the value of Ricky's Bitcoin bonus. And Ricky took the Bitcoin bonus like right near the top of the market for Bitcoin, and then it plummeted. And people were giving Ricky a lot of grief. I mean, there were some jokes made on this podcast about Ricky's Bitcoin bonus. And then look Ricky's Bitcoin bonus today. Ricky's bonus on January 4th, 2022 was $250,000 paid in Bitcoin. Today that bonus is worth $282,980, an increase of $32,980. And Ricky quote tweeted that and said, "Where are my trolls clowning on crypto now?" So what do you think, Brian?
I think it's funny that he has to tweet that he's victorious, because if he's holding on to it, you really truly never know. I feel like cryptocurrency, the little I know about it, it really depends on where the world is, the state of the world. So if the world crumbles, maybe it'll go even higher, and he'll be a rich man. But who cares? It's his choice. Do whatever you want with your money. I mean, it might be a huge payoff. People have gotten super rich from it before. Whatever. He has enough money. He clearly does. So this is just something he can hold on to for a long time and see what happens.
A hodl, baby.
Yeah.
I will just point out that if he had put his money into an S&P index fund, he would have more money than he did from his Bitcoin. But you know what? Bitcoin has made an amazing recovery, and maybe it will continue to go up. We will see. So shout out to Ricky, though, for clapping back. It took a while, but he got it in there. That is going to do it for today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Brian, great to have you here. Looking forward to seeing you out on the road in a couple of months here.
Oh, yeah. Can't wait, my friend. We're going to be doing a couple tournaments together as well. I can't wait.
Should be a lot of fun. Brian Earhart, Charlie Eisenhood signing off for this edition of The Upshot. We'll see you back on Thursday right here on the show.